Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Stewart, and we are fortunate to have Randy Yarbrough with us, and Larry Taylor is on board as well. And I'd like to welcome both of you on board. How are things out there in Colorado there, Randy, or wherever?
Or wherever in my secret mountain hideaway. But good evening, Babylon.
Yes.
I hope everyone's enjoying their delusions. But,
well, there is an awful lot of denial tea out there.
Yes.
Larry knows about that.
A belated happy quarter of a birthday. Or is it half or 3/4?
Let's see. I'm not a very good mathematician. I'm 77. And I get a birthday every 4 years. So somebody worked it out. I'm actually 19.25 years old. Because I'm a leap year baby. Just old enough to get a driver's license. How are you doing, Larry?
Oh, I'm hanging in, feeling much better, getting stronger, getting my dexterity back on my left side, and really the Lord's blessed me, so I can't complain. I am aware of the delusion and that incredible denial juice that I think now they made into ice cream cones. But, yeah, I was 70 this year, Stuart, same month, and you were 77, and Randy, if he throwed in a 5, we'd have 5777.
Yeah, there's a lot of those 577s floating around here. There's got to be a reason for it with all these, with Trump, he's loaded down with 777s. And a lot of people don't understand biblical mathematics, but the Lord does, and it really does work out. So the numbers are extremely important to him. And this year of 5777 appears to be a very key pivot year. So this is I think it's going to get interesting. What do you fellas see for the future, immediate future? Anything really wild?
I keep watching the casinos and the money and the so-called economists that everything's great, everything's going to be good here, and we'll raise the interest rates a little, but that's no big deal. Doesn't matter that your student loan is now going to cost you an extra, $50 a month, and your car loan, and your house loan, and your credit cards that you got maxed out. I think they're squeezing the people to the point of rebellion.
Well, that may be exactly what they want. What do you think, Larry? I think, the bots were talking about how these rate-adjustable mortgages, of which I guess a ton of people have, that they would start raising the rates, and that people would then not be able to afford to pay it. So there would be a housing glut on the market. Everybody would be putting their houses up on the market, trying to sell them, because they can't afford to pay the rate. What do you think, Larry?
I think that y'all are barking up an interesting tree. There are reports that the rich men are planning some type of economic, I guess you could say, bump in the road or real disaster. And ironically, too, we talk about the rich men, George Soros comes to mind. I was watching Fox News this evening, and they have finally apparently tied George Soros to the hired attorneys that Soros is paying that are assisting Obama and his new shadow government in the attempt to bring down or impeach or cause President Trump to leave office. This is all tied together. The rich men are behind this, and I think more than ever, we now realize that wherever Obama came from, okay, and I'll say whatever planet, however you want to put it, wherever Obama came from, because he was an unknown under other names previously to this.
Absolutely.
He showed up quickly, known by Russia to be coming, and it appears the rich men, George Soros and others, were behind him. So you're talking the New World Order. So this is really interesting.
Well, it's kind of like those Bible codes that I was looking at. I think it was on our last program, and how on more than, I think there's like 2 or 3 of them. I don't have it up in front of me. But they were talking about Obama, clone, DNA, copy, et cetera, which would indicate that Obama could well be not who he is represented to be. What do you think, Randy?
You mean he crawled out of a tank from the Watcher's technology?
He's coming up out of the well. The clerics over there did say, several of them, that they thought Obama was the 12th Imam. I think he comes up out of a well somewhere.
Yes, the bottomless pit. Mm-hmm. No, this game is not over. We've got Valerie Jarrett moving in with them. That's, cozy arrangement there. She's a hardcore communist, Marxist, Iranian Muslim. Now, what is that?
Yeah. I mean, this is a communist coup attempt. And what bothers me, I guess, and I'd like your comments from both of you on this one, why are they not going after these people, particularly Soros? Soros could be arrested already on charges of sedition. He is an American citizen. I think he's got dual citizenship. But they could go out and get him for sedition, even now, and probably even could with Hillary Clinton legally. I'm at a loss as to why absolutely nothing is being done to stop this. What do you think, Larry?
Well, ironically, I will say history has apparently proved out that Obama and Hillary and George Soros was connected to the previous elections, trying to unseat Putin in Russia and trying to unseat Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. And that's historical. That's not making up facts. That's historical. You can prove that. And so with also Soros involved in the, coming against the Brexit movie, UK trying to leave the EU and other countries trying to leave the EU, and Soros also blocking that, Augusto Perez brought up a really good point not too long back. He was from Cuba. He witnessed Castro and the communist coup and takeover from Batista during the Cuban Revolution. And he said since he experienced that and then fled to the USA, he now sees the same communist movement using the same playbook and doing the very same thing. And as Stewart says, we're almost on the last page of this communist takeover. And I, too, wonder, just like Stewart asked, why the Trump people, why the patriotic movement, et cetera, and especially our own government that's loyal, why they haven't put up a more solidified front to stop the coup takeover that's going on. And I don't have the answer. Augusto says, from what he witnessed in Cuba, that he gives the Trump administration possibly, at the most, 3 months until they unseat Trump. So we're at a critical time frame, really critical right now.
Absolutely we are. But I don't know why they aren't going after Soros, going after Clinton, going after Clinton Foundation. I mean, the FBI's got all the evidence there to present. I don't know if Jeff Sessions has had time to clean house in the Justice Department, which I doubt, because
don't think so.
That's the snake pit there of the U.S. attorneys that are,
Obama-rights?
Obamanites, yes, Obamanites.
Abominations.
Yeah,
yes.
I hear they're cleaning house in the State Department quietly, that a lot of the career bureaucrats that have been there are being shown the door.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe...
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we need to flood the White House, folks, with calls and postcards. You can send a postcard, and that'll whip through the postal system because it's not in an envelope. And just, send her to jail. Send them to jail.
So that's go ahead.
If the American people will get up off of their couches, shut off the television, and start calling and emailing and researching for themselves, because I'm kind of that the, quote, Christian conservatives out there, Mr. Trump is in there, he's going to save the day for us, we can all go back to sleep. It was It was like that with George Bush in 2000.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think, this is for both of you guys, do you think there's a chance that, we've talked about Trump and the Cyrus connection and a possible delay, or is this an orchestrated deal of which Trump is maybe knowingly or unknowingly a part of? We have the Masonic Ordo ab Chao, out of chaos comes order, and we don't have the chaos yet, but I have heard reports, you guys can chime in on that one, of an American spring when it warms up a little bit. What about you, Larry? Have you heard any more about that? I've heard rumbles, that's all.
There are reports that, as it's similar to the Egyptian or the Middle East, the Arab Spring, that the Muslim Brotherhood moved through, creating the chaos, bringing down governments, setting up their own, that we're apparently, because that's an M.O. That Obama believes in. As a matter of fact, he supported it. But that appears to be an M.O. that's threatening now America in the next few months, maybe March, we're in March, maybe April and May. And this, I think, is what Augusto's worried about, is that movement, when it hits the streets, in the same fashion, they are expecting to get Trump out of office or cause him to resign or impeach him. All of those movements are in play right now. And so, we've got to be cautious. But also, according to, what Randy said there, I do understand that apparently about the 14th or so of this month, there is a plan for a big postcard mailing to go out to the White House. I haven't heard fully about that, but I've been contacted by people that know about that. There's a big move to send, just like Randy said, postcards, because they get through very easily to the White House. Now, I don't know what that movement is. Maybe it's an anti-communist movement, but something's going on, and the Cyrus connection, and I'll mention that in a minute. And I wanted to read something, so whenever you get ready to talk about that, I'll say something.
Well, the postcard sending campaign is put together by the deplorables.
Uh-oh. There's tons of deplorables around.
Yes.
Anybody that believes in the Bible, anybody that believes in Jesus Christ, anybody that believes in anything good or right is a deplorable. Right?
Absolutely. And so the deplorables, send in there, hang in there, President Trump. We're behind you. What can we do for you? Just postcards of encouragement. And
no,
send them all on the
say, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that he did say while he was campaigning that he could not do this alone. He needed these people to come help.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's up to the American people. Are you gonna get off your couches and do something, or are you just gonna sit back and wait for the blessed hope?
Yeah. What do you think on that, Larry? You think, you said, Augusto said about 3 months maybe if the American people really didn't do anything, or they didn't round up some of these guys and put them, because he's got a terrible problem on his hands. How does he round up somebody like Hillary Clinton or Obama without causing a civil war?
Well,
even though he'd be
Stewart,
fully justified.
Yeah, well, Stewart, the interesting thing is I'm already getting information, even from Fox, of all places, which is better than mainstream news, but they're already talking this is civil war. And I don't know if y'all saw my post this morning, Whistleblower Magazine, declaring a civil war already in progress. I don't think we've got to start one. I really believe it's already started. And what's interesting is how much, or a good question is, does the Psalm 2 war, is it the spiritual side of a physical USA civil war that we're about to experience, the number 2?
What do you think, Randy?
Well, I'm hearing reports that the leftists, the millennials, the dyed-in-the-wool socialists that have no clue are out arming themselves. That would never before would have thought of going and buying a gun.
Oh. Well, that's not really too good news, because a civil war, right now I guess you'd have to call it a propaganda war, a Cold War.
Yes.
But if they go out into the streets, then it can become hot real quick. And they can even plant some agents and kill a bunch of people, and then away we go. But I think Larry's right. I think we are headed in that direction. And if Augusto lived through one of those and he sees the same MO, then they're gonna try and carry it out. They're gonna try and bring in the chaos and then fill the gap and get rid of Trump. But there was a vision that Larry sent me. I should probably get into that a little bit. It's kind of interesting. It's about Trump. And what it says is Trump Dream by a Chuck Wilson. Have you heard of him, Larry or Randy?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, Chuck Wilson is Augusto's Blog Talk Radio manager, and he lives in Anchorage, Alaska. And this is a dream he was given recently and had forwarded it to me, and I went ahead and forwarded it to you because it involved Trump and them trying to do damage to Trump in this dream.
Okay, this is what it says. The dream began in a large room. People were standing around a large machine up against the wall at the end of the room. The machine filled the entire wall, was 4 to 5 feet deep, and I knew it had millions of volts of electricity running through it, but it made no sound. In the middle of the machine, there was a space where a chair sat, which was connected to the machine. Donald Trump was sitting in the chair. So obviously, it's an electric chair. I saw someone reach up on the left side of the machine and throw a switch. much like you would see in the lab of a mad scientist. The throwing of the switch was to send millions of volts of electricity into the chair occupied by Trump. Nothing happened. Several attempts were made to activate the machine and kill Mr. Trump, but nothing happened. The scene then changed, and I saw Donald Trump standing in front of the machine on the left side. He was looking up at it in wonderment, and at the same time, he was throwing the switch, wondering why the machine did not work before. Then the dream ended. Now here's his interpretation. The machine represents all the wicked forces trying to remove Donald Trump from the White House. George Soros, Obama, the Clintons, the Bushes, and all of the occultists, like witches, who tried to send curses against Trump on a particular day with no effect. When I saw the announcement of this day of cursing posted on Facebook, I felt in my spirit that it would fizzle and Trump would not be affected by it. And he wasn't. The machine made no noise. This represents the quietness under which these evil forces work. They want to remain invisible and undetected so they can operate without hindrance from people who are aware of what they are doing. The cloak of secrecy was greatly breached by WikiLeaks. I believe more WikiLeaks are around the corner, which will further damage the machine. The high voltage of the machine simply represents the enormous power of this wicked machine to fulfill its evil agenda worldwide. It's obviously talking about the Illuminati. Donald Trump sat facing away from the machine. He knows there are forces who want to remove him from the White House, but may not really be aware of how massive these forces are that are not happy with his miraculous win over Hillary Clinton. The person who threw the switch was faceless, indicating that the individuals pulling the switch or the strings behind the scenes wish to remain a mystery. Some have been exposed, others remain in the shadows for the time being. And Trump standing next to the machine, I believe, represents his awareness of just what he has been up against, and he is amazed that this machine was unable to eliminate him. He throws the switch himself, trying to see how it works, and wondering why it didn't work. What are your comments on that one?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that lays it out.
I think it does. Yeah. They're trying everything they can, and this brings us to the delay that you spoke about, Randy, just before showtime. I don't know whether we're in a delay or whether this thing is just running along, and this was all worked out by the Lord beforehand. And although it appears as though possibly a delay, what do you think, Larry? What do you think about that vision?
Well, I feel like really the delay started basically on Inauguration Day, the minute Trump entered the White House and Obama was removed. You know, I feel like that this whole deal, you know, Trump was exactly right. This was a done deal. All the left, the communists, the coup, you know, they all had plans. Hillary was already a shoo-in. She already had it. She knew she had it. Everybody knew she had it. That's one of the great shocks, absolute great shock, when this very strange event happened and Trump won. You know, most of the people voted for her. He won the electoral vote, which gives you the election. And they went into insanity, basically, at that point. Now, you know, we tie him in, you know, and even Isaiah 45 talks clearly about a Cyrus, you know, the Persian king, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go through all that again. But, you know, we wonder, and I'm still in kind of a wonder. You know, I do believe that Trump represents Cyrus. I know a lot of people I admire that are prophetic that also have agreed totally with that. Now, where is this leading? You know, number one, if Trump is Cyrus, then is Trump also as much as judgment to America as Cyrus was to Babylon? Because you got to remember, after Cyrus took over Babylon, you didn't hear about Babylon anymore ruling the world, doing anything actually. And interestingly, is Trump's judgment to America in the same mode, to where he will literally judge this entire American governmental system that appears now so deeply corrupted? You remember what I've said many times: if it's all broke at the top, you're not going to fix it. So it's Trump's judgment, but yet at the same time, being a Cyrus, gives a window of time for God's people to finish their course. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, it would appear that way. How about you, Randy?
I'm not all that familiar with Cyrus. Go into that. Tell me about that, Larry.
Well, if you read Isaiah 45, it clearly lays out Cyrus.
Okay.
And also, it's mentioned in Daniel, the book of Daniel. It talks about some of this, and really, it's interesting, because Cyrus was a Persian king, someone that did not know the Lord, did not know the Creator at all, but the Creator picked him. Now, why did the Creator pick a Persian king named Cyrus? And remember, at the same time that he was picked, the people of God had been taken captive and hauled off to Babylon and were prisoners and servants of the Babylonian people and held captive by the Babylonian civilization. Now, Cyrus all of a sudden was used by the Lord to go down and conquer Babylon, and ironically it says that Cyrus took a large army. Babylon also had a huge army, and people were expecting an incredible battle. But somehow, strange again, another strange act, Cyrus took Babylon easily and was not prevented, and they couldn't stop him. And at the same time, when Cyrus took Babylon and took over the government, or conquered the government itself of Babylon, the governmental entity at that time, the Babylonian hierarchy, he also told the people of God who were the captives, you can go home now and rebuild your temple, build your walls, build your, Jerusalem, blah, 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 blah. And he made a window of time, and he actually, I found out when I read it, Stewart, correct me if I'm wrong, but he actually, I believe, sent soldiers to protect them while they did that.
Yes. And this is why I think that the letter, certainly BB and the Sanhedrin know what's going on, and they asked Putin and Trump to assist in building their temple, knowing full well of what the Muslim world's going to think about that when they start that.
Yes.
So that's the kind of parallel, because if Trump actually does destroy the machine, like this kind of indicates his vision, that would destroy the Babylonian hold. And that would allow then to, and maybe that's as long as Trump, is going to be allowed to hang in there long enough to get all this done, move the the embassy and the capital back to Jerusalem. And I think I heard somewhere, that the embassy grounds are already underway in Jerusalem somewhere. Did you tell me that, Larry? I can't remember where I found that.
I posted that. Yeah, that's the grounds are already squared away where this new embassy is supposed to be built, and it's ready. And one thing that's interesting too is recently, Trump came out and announced he was going to do this, and that's quieted down though. He came under such heavy attack. For now, even Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been kind of quieting down the Knesset in the talk about the embassy, because that's a lot of hot stuff. But it appears in the background that this is going to occur. I've even got emails from people in Israel that I know personally. They're saying, the land's ready. even the new house to house the new ambassador in Jerusalem is prepared. And of course, the embassy at this time is around Tel Aviv, and and so this all seems to be in motion. And what intrigues me, and I'd like your guys' opinion on this, I call those three guys the wild cards in the deck, and that is Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Benjamin Netanyahu.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Wild cards. Wild cards is a good term for it. That I don't know, Larry, where this is going. The Lord knows.
Well, it seems to me. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
As far as building their temple, I mean, they've had that thing ready. The everything's ready to come in, and it's like prefabbed. We stick it all together really quick. All the blocks.
Well, Larry, what do you think? What's the Arab or the Muslim world going to think about that? I would almost have to think that they have to have a war before they're going to put their temple up.
Stewart, the information that I'm receiving is that's exactly what they expect, and Israel itself is arming for that war. And it appears, and I tie this in, I'll dovetail this into your Daniel 8 war warning, because Iran is suddenly also pushing extremely heavy towards, the missile attacks on Israel from Hamas and ISIS fighters on one hand, and the Hezbollah fighters on the other hand, and even Assad, who is, a surrogate of Iran and Russia, he has even come out and publicly announced now that he will allow Hezbollah to fire missiles against Israel from Syrian soil. So we're now looking at a Daniel 8 war possibly, and Isaiah 17, maybe the same time. I don't know. What do you think on that, Stewart?
Well, it seems to be shaping up awful fast, and I guess there's no way you can know the exact sequence, whether it's Isaiah 17 and then Daniel 8 and then Ezekiel 38 and 39. But those wars, I never thought that Psalm, I can't think of the name of it, 93 or whatever, they call that a war, but actually it's not a war. If you read it carefully, that's an attitude. Let us drive Israel into the sea that she be no more. All the people round about is an attitude that leads to the real war.
Yeah, Psalm 83.
Yes, 83, that's right. So I never thought that was a war. I just always thought that was a mental attitude, and that is their attitude, and that's exactly what they're saying, just as the Psalm says. So we can't be far off. What do you think, Randy? I think we're awful close to something major here. Not necessarily just in Israel, but everywhere.
Yes, everywhere. EMP from my sources and their sources, that one of the biggest things talked about in the halls of the dark shadow government is EMP. That, be ready. Be ready for an EMP. Be ready to wake up in the morning and it's now 1850, technology-wise.
Yeah. And not too many people would be able to survive that.
No.
Because, I've often told people, shut your power off for 3 days. Go out and throw your master switch for the whole house and turn it off. And then take out a notebook and write down what that 3 days is like. And you'll find out real quick what you can and cannot do. And they have issued major reports from the government about an EMP attack. And the claim is that probably within a year, 90% of the people in America would be dead.
Yes.
So, this is a major thing. And I wanted to ask you, Randy, you're big into the agricultural situation. What's going on out your way agriculturally with the farmers? Is this shaping up to be a bad year, do you think, or is this going to be another fairly good year?
We have the lowest prices in agriculture ever in history.
Really?
In the height of the Great Depression, and I don't have that chart down here with me, but every month USDA figures parity ratio pricing of what the cost or what the price should be to the farmer for him to carry on a viable operation. We're down now to 31% of parity price for a bushel of wheat. That's roughly $18. The farmer's only getting 31% of that. Corn is, I think, $11, almost $12 a bushel. They're getting 31% of that. All across
how are they going to
survive? They're not. The reports I'm getting is because this is right now when the farmers are headed into the bankers saying, I need an operating loan, and many of them, hundreds of them aren't getting their loans renewed.
Wow.
Agriculture is in absolute depression. Absolute depression.
So, okay, we got problems in California, which is a huge breadbasket. Out your way, of course. What do they plant out by you? Or soybean, corn, and that sort of thing? Is that what they generally go for? That's what they have here.
Right. Well, my immediate area mainly is ranching and hay farming. But as you go east, and then south into the Panhandle of Texas and down through there, you got wheat, corn, and there's some guys that are trying to raise potatoes, but mainly the two main crops are wheat, corn, and some green sorghum. Soybeans, farther east from the middle of Kansas east into the grain belt and up by you guys. But, we've the mad scientists have decided that they know better than God to GMO the food on us, and we're paying the ramifications for that now.
So, if we were to tie this back, excuse me again, into the Joseph week back in the Old Testament, where they had 2 years of relatively, I can't even say good harvest, but then they had 5 years of no harvest.
Right.
Do you think we're heading into that? Or maybe in it already?
I think we're headed into that. If you look at the crop reports from Australia and Brazil, Argentina, down through there, their price, the farmers are rebelling, saying no, we're not. We can't settle for this price. We can't grow a crop for this price. So, a lot of it is, we're coming up here tomorrow, March the 4th. It'll be 84 years of FDR's inauguration. That was the first coup in this country. And the the Great Depression, that the Fed finally admitted that, we probably had a big part in causing that. Oh, well.
Shall we say deliberate?
Yes. It only took them 50 years to admit that.
So if they can't afford to do this, well, what are they going to do? Sell out? Close down? If they can't get the bank loans, what do they do?
Then they're in foreclosure. You know, somebody comes along and USDA's policy is they would like to see there being one farmer for every county that's agriculturally based.
Wow.
You know, we used to have 20 million people on the farms. We're down to 2.3 million farmers. That doesn't count your little hobby farms, and you know the folks have gone out there and trying to scratch a living out of the soil as far as growing organic and selling it in farmers markets and stuff. But the major production, you know, of wheat, corn, cotton, soybeans, barley, those five main commodities, there's less than, 2.3, 2.4 million farmers now.
Oh. So what kind of a forecast then do you see? I mean, if they can't even get the loans and they're going to go into foreclosure, are the big boys going to come in, buy them up, buy the land, or UN take over or whatever, which is basically what it is anyway?
Chinese are buying lots of farmland.
Oh, they are?
They bought the Smithfield Foods, the major pork producer here, number one pork producer. You've got JBL, which is Brazilian beef. They've come in and bought up all of the feedlots and processing plants, and which they've then turned around and closed a bunch of those down, and now there's the abomination approved them, JBL, bringing in South American beef, not processed but hanging weight. And they're also talking about bringing in live cattle into the country.
So then the Chinese are going to control a good share of the food.
Yes.
Well, not only that, Stewart, I don't know, to go along with what Randy's saying, the Chinese have also bought up a number of water sources. In other words, incredible water sources from artesian wells are the wells that are above ground that are basically in Oklahoma, down in Texas, and in Arkansas. I'm talking about big water sources. The Chinese have bought them up and are obtaining all the water sources in America in that region. And at the same time, I'm hearing reports up in Kansas and further west that the Saudi Arabians have come in and are purchasing field after field after field to grow crops to send back to their location. So this is really, it's happening pretty much in secrecy, but in the corporate world, people know of it.
So can we spell this out as stealth famine coming?
Yes.
So, folks,
absolutely.
If you are paying any attention here, you might want to be stocking up on food. You can't eat gold, you can't eat silver, and paper money doesn't taste too good even with cream and sugar on it. So,
well, another thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I was just going to mention, because of the massive radiation that we're receiving from all directions, especially Fukushima's radiation poisoning, I used to, a lot of radiation around, I take sea kelp, which is a product of the ocean, and, there's iodine in it, and that protects your body, and, recently, I couldn't find any hardly. And I found out that Fukushima had so radiated and poisoned the Pacific that they had to actually stop obtaining kelp on the West Coast and now are having to get it off of Greenland and the Iceland region and along Canada. So we've got people need to also take in consideration that I don't know how much the animal life in the ocean and fish that have died, and so much of it's radiated now. There again, you're seeing a stealth famine that is coming very quickly.
Yeah, boy, that's not a very good forecast there, Randy. So what are your people out there going to do? I mean, I know you're very big on. Don't you have I know you have a radio show, but you do a farm thing too, don't you?
Well, we do a conference call for NORM, National Organization for Raw Materials, twice a week, and there's a hardcore little group of us that hang in there, because if we can ever get through to President Trump, in this country from 1941 to 1953, we paid the farmers parity pricing for their raw material production. The raw materials are the wealth. It's not, your wealth is not what comes to you on a statement at the end of the month or the end of the quarter and has a number on the bottom. That number represents your claim to wealth. Your wealth is the clothes on your back and the shoes on your feet, the car in your driveway, the house over your head. That is your wealth. Everybody thinks money is wealth. But when we did this from 41 to 53, that's putting money into circulation at the first point of sale without debt. That money comes in without debt. That's the new wealth produced every year. And if you really study the Bible out, folks, God's economic system is the self-sufficient family farm. Why are so many of the parables, so many of the stories all about agriculture? If you really study it out. But what that does is you pay that first dollar in for the raw materials. That dollar will then circulate through the economy 7 or 8 times. When we did it we've had these periods. 1910 to 1914 was what you would call 100% time frame, and then we had from 1927 through 29, where agriculture is producing enough. The farmers are producing enough and have enough income that they are able to fund their operation without debt. And the reason it stopped in 1953 was the bankers could not loan out all the reserves they had in their banks. And that's the basic reason. I don't know if I explained that good or not.
Well, everything did change because I did a lot of wedding photography, and one evening I was doing the evening wedding dance and all that, and anyway, the bride and the groom were out dancing, and the grandpa was kind of standing out by himself just watching the thing. So I went over and I spoke to him, and I said, "Well, what did you do during your lifetime?" And he said, "I was a banker." And I said, "Oh, well, how are these?" He was a farmer, farm banker. I said, "How are these guys making out with all of this? Loans and heavy loans and terrible prices for machinery." And he says, "You know what?" He said, "I've been watching this stuff cross my desk for years." And he said, there's a method to the madness. they're bankrupting very slowly all these farmers. And at the end, he says they're going to be taken over. And he actually started to cry. He was watching his granddaughter, and I saw tears come to his eyes, and he said, you know what? She's going to be a slave, and she doesn't even know it. So there's a banker in a little town who knew exactly what was going on and who was behind it.
Yes.
And would you say he was right?
Oh, absolutely, he's right.
How do these farmers afford these huge machines and combines and tractors that are, they're giants now? If what they're getting for the crops, they're all going to go bankrupt, right?
Pretty much. I mean, they go, well, the farm program and the subsidies and all this, and it's like, well, now the farm program has pared down to, your farm program is that you're buying crop insurance. And so if your yield is down, you get a little, you get a check. If you get hailed out or flooded out or whatever, it's not crop insurance, it's banker's insurance. So that by the time the harvest is all done and it's all paid for, or all sold, you have enough money to go into the bank and pay them off, and then you go down to social services because now you qualify for food stamps.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, of course, the Bible does say that a penny for a loaf of bread, or day's wages, basically, for a whole loaf of bread. That's not only hyperinflation, that sounds to me like scarcity.
Right. Well, in James, where the laborers that worked in the master's fields, that the cry of the farmers have risen to the Lord of the Sabbath.
Yes.
And they kept back their wages by fraud.
Well, that's the IRS, of course.
Yeah, I know that.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that the IRS actually is mentioned. It's just not called the IRS. It's simply called the rich men of the earth, and how they are withholding your wages, and it's a total fraud. It has no, honest things to it. It's a total criminal operation from start to finish. So I don't know what the answer to all this is, other than the return of the Lord and straighten all this stuff out. And meanwhile, we have Trump, who is going to try to straighten some of this stuff out, it appears. So anyway, got any other comments, Randy, on the ag business? Or should we move on to Earth Changes, which really dovetails into this?
Yes. Well, yeah, let's go on into that. Other than, folks, go out and stock your pantries. Like you said, for years and years and years, Stewart, go buy rice, go buy dried beans, go get canned soup, and stock that pantry full.
Yeah, because you're going to need it. And I suppose some people think, well, they'll just come steal it. Well, at least you did your part. And you have to ask the Lord for protection.
Right.
But please, everybody listening, this is coming, and it's coming I think, much more rapidly. The latest bots for March, I just read a little bit of this. More signs of rampaging. I want your comments too, Larry, on this one. More signs, rampaging climate change. Forecast is coming along to upend the last of the warmest claims. What they're claiming is we're going into an ice age. Now, I know that sounds just the opposite of what everybody's claiming, but I think this is an ice age coming. These sets are suggesting that shocking incidents with ice and snow in the spring in the northern hemisphere are to be a part of a large reconsideration of the global warming claims by some very powerful social influencers. These social influences are being described as blockages that will be removed in the logic of the climate change into an ice age. These sets have global warmth coming under attack at several levels. Perhaps the most shocking is forecast to include physical attacks on famous warmest faces in public, and they will be caught on media. These sets are showing that young people will be outraged at the lies sold to them as accurate climate projections and will react badly over this year as they encounter famous lying faces out there in the public. Physical assaults taking place in restaurants and at speeches. And flying food will be involved. I don't know if either of you guys ever been in a food fight.
Yes.
I think they're fun. I got involved in one. My mother wasn't too happy with it. We had to clean it all up.
Okay, let's go back.
What do you think, Larry?
Well, it's really interesting. You were talking that information, and it reminds me so much. I remember when you was on Art Bell's show, Stewart, and you talked about a quick climate change, polar shift, and you gave a classic. I mean, it was really a good description of that data. Well, it wasn't a year after that they came out, Whitley Strieber and Art Bell, with that book, which followed quickly was the movie Day After Tomorrow. And I know most people have seen that once or maybe more, but Day After Tomorrow was a quick ice age overnight almost.
Yes.
I'll never forget it. I remember you so well on the show, and then what you said wound up in a movie, but it's not far-fetched.
Well, I think it's very, very real. They do have, let's see, let me see if I can find out some of this stuff. Continuing rain in California, along all the west coast of North America. Not surprising to see many references to inland seas that will be showing up. We must note that the data sets have a big earthquake series ahead for North America over 2017 all the way through 2020, indicated to cause a bowl into which will pour rivers, and that will become an inland sea. These sets seem to be suggesting, by the number of geographic references to an area that is more or less central USA. What does that do to your food, Randy? Even let's say the economy holds and the farmers are able to get out there. If we're going to have earth changes and we are moving into a rapid, totally erratic weather, hot, cold, tornadoes, high winds, how do the farmers get out there and do it?
They don't. They might plant the crop, but the big question is, will they harvest? Now, if we go back into the 70s, Dr. Edwin Teller, he wrote a paper about climate change and about global warming, but it wasn't global warming that had them so concerned. Once, and this is from the geologic record and everything else, once the heat up starts, then that changes everything, that the temperature cools very rapidly. And by rapidly, they're talking from 7 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. Now, all of our crops, see, I have Cliff Harris on sometimes on the radio. He's a climatologist. He's been looking at the weather for almost 70 years. And he's gone back through, the weather in the Bible. He wrote a book on that. But he said what we've experienced over the last basically 150, 200 years is abnormal weather. He said normal weather that the Earth has experienced is extremes. Extreme wet, extreme dry, depending on where you're at. But normal weather is the extremes. Now, we've raised all of these hybrid crops, these GMO crops, monoculture, only a couple of strains of corn, the soybeans. The wheat is not so much. There's still lots of good viable strains out there. But these plants have been raised in this temperature cycle. Can't go too low, can't go too high. We've been in a nice medium here. But if the weather changes like this from the extremes, too cold, too hot, too dry, too wet, the crop fails.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are.
So another reason, I suppose, to be stocking up. Because he does claim in here that we're going to have massive erratic weather because we are moving rapidly, I think what he thinks, into an ice age.
Right.
And you're right. That's what I got the paper from Dr. Ed Teller, and they were trying to slow down the global warming, thinking that if they could slow it down, then they could slow down the approaching ice age. That's the way I read that. Is that correct, Randy? Larry?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Okay. So there's a big valley. What is that? That Joaquin Valley out in California where a lot of the stuff is grown? San
Joaquin? Yes.
I think so. I just read an article where it's dropping 2 feet every year.
Well, and that's part of that is over the shutting. Number one, the environmentalists shutting the water off to protect the little fishes from the farmers, leaving it in the river. And so the farmers, my brother-in-law lives right out there. And he said they're drilling water wells. The water well drillers are drilling day and night continually, or have been in the and just trying to dig more water wells and pump the aquifers dry to keep production up.
Now, you've had some odd stuff down where you are, haven't you, Larry, on earthquakes and that sort of thing going on?
Oh yeah, we've had we're now apparently more earthquake active Oklahoma is than California, which is shocking. And at the same time, even though they've tried to blame fracking with the Oklahoma earthquakes, they're erroneous in that because the earthquakes are too high in magnitude for a fracking quake, and also the depth is too deep for a fracking quake. So we've really got deep earth movement and activity in Oklahoma, and I heard somebody the other day that passed through a town called Cushing, which is a oil center, and they said a lot of the buildings are devastated, a lot more than people realize. We're hearing about earthquakes in Oklahoma, but nobody's seeing the photographs of the damage. I had that incredible vision of a chasm coming down through Oklahoma, which reminded me of that movie 10.5 Apocalypse, where, there was a great chasm beginning to open up all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And so a lot of things that are in movies are not that far-fetched.
Well, it's kind of like the bots where you wonder where they're getting this from. He also talks about, he talked about atmospheric rivers, which now the Weather Bureau picks up. He talked about that 4 or 5 years ago and said that was going to come into the verbiage, and of course it has now. but he talks about new values for our rivers in the sky that will include rapids, which are described as pulsing waterfalls of rain that will be stationary over an area, but at the same time pulsing out rain in waterfall amounts. These pulsing waterfalls of rain are indicated to be photographed and even video recorded. And then he says, have far more action in climate and weather over 2017 that we have seen even over the last 5 years, which were very active years. Data continues to grow in support that the extra-seasonal, sudden plasma freezing events, which have occurred sporadically, data now shows such instantaneous freezing events will be occurring this year, whatever that is. He even talks about large boats that will freeze to the point that metals become brittle, and aircraft freezing suddenly in mid-flight.
Wow, Stewart, that sounds
erratic
like
weather. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
That sounds like the Day After Tomorrow movie. That's what happened in Day After Tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think, Randy?
I guess I better keep my long underwear close at hand.
Yeah, this is getting weird. He says solar spectrum shift, which I would presume is probably UV related, is being forecast as driving a number of changes to our food crops, just what we were talking about, as well as plant life in general, affecting many of the invertebrates at the species-wide level. Solar spectrum shift. Now, this is something that Stan Dale talked about, Larry. I want you to comment on that. Is forecasting a slide into the red light over the next, he's got 12 years, so much that red reflections and red sunsets will be reappearing as a dominant theme in discussion later on. So, what do you think about this solar shift?
Well, it makes sense, Stewart, and I had talked distinctly with Stan Dale a number of years ago when he began to warn about we are approaching on our sun a point of fuel change. In other words, the sun is reaching a point it will switch fuels. And he told me that already he was detecting different light spectrums coming off the sun that we had never had before. We were also, he said, different radiations were coming off the sun that we hadn't experienced, and he also talked about the UV ramping up and warning also at the same time about the loss of our protection, the magnetosphere and all of this. And he mentioned the South Atlantic anomaly and began to say that was not going to be the only source of radiation and trouble on the planet, that we were going to begin to have more eruptions of that type of UV concentrated radiation over certain locations, in North America, up into Canada, etc. So, yeah, we're seeing all of that, all that Stan Dale warned about, and you just mentioned on the bots, they appear to be in harmony.
Randy, have you seen anything? I mean, the sun appears to me to be brighter than normal. Well, have you noticed any changes or irregularities out there at all?
I haven't paid that much attention, Stewart.
I was just curious because that could affect plants, like he's saying. They could be burned up by the UV. And, the Bible more or less does indicate that famine is coming, big time. And I remember Red Elk, when I interviewed him, he made that awful comment to me. He said, "You've seen those pictures of those little kids with their distended bellies over in Africa and elsewhere?" He looked right at me and he said, "Those are going to be your grandchildren." That famine is coming to the United States, big time. So I guess you could have famine for a number of reasons, right? I mean, you could have a breakdown in trucking so that the food doesn't get to where it should. You could have UV ratings coming up to the point where it's burning the stuff, bad weather, erratic weather like you were talking about. But no matter which way you look, it just doesn't appear to be very good for us here in the United States. Would you agree with that, both of you, Hank?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, what's interesting, too, Stewart, is the fact that Stan Dale was also, when he was in Australia, already experimenting and researching, along with the Australian government, a new thing called red tide that came out a number of years ago, and that was literally plant life in the ocean waters, river waters, lakes and pools and all of this was being changed. They were going into a poisoning phase and creating poisons, and the DNA was even changing, he said, with these plant life. Now, recently, up here in Oklahoma, we've had a massive tree die-off. All kind of trees are dying. Also, my plants, the last couple of years that I have planted and tried to grow fruit on and things, I've noticed a burning of the leaves, a curling, a drying of the leaves, and with this new sun changes, and I'll amen to the fact that the sun's brighter. I've noticed that. Very, very bright. But we've also been having solar storms coming off openings in the atmosphere of the sun. One went on today, actually, and storming in the geomagnetosphere. But this is all affecting the plant life, too, and probably the animal life, as you said.
Yeah, I think it's affecting people, too. It seems like a lot of people are just losing it, particularly the liberals. They seem to be really losing it.
Electromagnetic radiation that we're all subject to.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the trees dying and the plants, we can probably look up to their chemtrailing and the amount of aluminum. Farmer friend of mine in Kansas did some extensive soil tests on his place, and the aluminum content is way, way, way what it should be normal. Now you've got Monsanto coming out now touting this new, they haven't got it perfected yet, but this new aluminum-tolerant corn.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh.
They announced that about a little over a year ago, that they were working on this new aluminum-tolerant corn.
Well, aluminum is really, really bad for people. So what are they doing? So the corn you eat will be filled with aluminum.
Well,
from the chemtrails, which don't exist, and the airplanes that make them don't exist.
Right.
And what's amazing, guys, is the fact, I don't know if you watched the chemtrails, but we have been inundated with massive, massive chemtrails. And recently, Randy, I know I told Stewart this, they flew over our area, and the chemtrails were black. They were dark-colored instead of light. And Garnett took one of the pictures, I think sent to Stewart. But, they're even dark now, so we don't know everything that's in those chemtrails.
Well, they've admitted they're doing it now.
Yes.
They've come out and said, we're tentatively exploring the possibility of being able to reflect the sun so that we can cool things down. Yes.
They've been doing it for the last 20 years. I even have government reports proving they've been doing it.
Yes.
So now they're just coming out, because people don't look up, evidently. They just think it's a jet contrail. And, of course, they aren't. They are chemtrails, and they're filled with who knows what. And they seem to be increasing all over. They have been here. I can't go outside a day without seeing a whole bunch of them. Even when it's cloudy, if you can look up through, you'll see chemtrails above.
Yeah.
So this is bad. Getting back to the food, here's another one from Global Population. This is from the bots. All humanity is showing in the longer-term data sets for impacts of food prices and food availability. These sets are hinting that seismic activity as well as ice age developing conditions will be the primary driving factors. And he talks about a credit freeze being combined with bad rain, bad earthquakes, bad solar radiation, and other factors into crushing the food supplies insofar as the prices are concerned. So I guess there you got it. Have you heard any more, Larry, on the Antarctica at all?
Not since you gave that information on the last show. However, there does seem to still be a little leaking going out of the evacuation there, but very little on what they're evacuating for. And of course, what you read was as close as it would come to it. I'm kind of interested, though, that the bots even began to zero in on Antarctica before this occurred.
Yes, and this last one was a lot about Antarctica. And have you heard about this, Randy, and so-called new discovery?
Yes, I've looked at some of this, and what Steve Quayle has come out with, and
what's your take on all this?
Why did John Kerry go down there? Mm-hmm. I haven't been able to absolutely confirm that the abomination went down there. Then I heard another little report that there was another group of, quote, dignitaries that went down there, and one of them was Buzz Aldrin.
Yes.
And the tweet was, we've released hell.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, that might be what is being referred to here, because this thing from Steve Quayle, certain giant entities as large as 18 to 20 feet, numbering 4 dozen, have broken out of the lab and are headed into the vast tunnel systems beneath the Antarctic continent. So they sent out 2 special operations to seek and destroy, I guess. So, what are they doing underneath there? Dr. Peter Beater, a long time ago, said they were cloning 30 years ago.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I think we're right where the Lord said we were. We're just as in the days of Noah. I think that's right where we're at.
Yeah, a lot of DNA and genetic experiments, and I always thought that the Greek mythology really wasn't mythology at all. That these were, how do we say, experiments, fooling around with DNA and genetics, because that's what they did. Larry, have you heard any more about the breakout at all? Other than the one, what is it, Red Elk, that said something about there was going to be a breakout? You said, 3 or 4 places in America that were going to come out?
Yeah, I've had some talks with Red Elk about the breaking out, and that occurred about the time, we were having, they thought it was earthquakes, but apparently it was explosion deep underground, and Red Elk said that they were using nukes deep underground to try to seal off these areas where these things were trying to break out. And, he called them entities, or he called them long walkers. And he told me that he knew of one place in the Four Corners region, one place up by Canada on the U.S.-Canadian border, and he gave me another place, and I don't remember what it was. He said they were eventually going to break through in those locations, but he really didn't give me any data worldwide. So, but he said these things were going to come out, and maybe that's what we're beginning to see now. Some, you know, and ironically, to dovetail right into that is the Afghanistan giant, you know, that they killed. That giant, you know, the military brought back to the U.S. corpse. That just kind of tells you that these are not bones; these are real.
Well, it's kind of like, what is Bigfoot? What really is Bigfoot? Do you have Bigfoot out there? Do you have any of your forts out there in the Colorado area, in the mountain area?
No. No UFO sightings a lot. To the west of me in what is called the San Luis Valley, go up in close to the mountains there. There's a New Age Maurice Strong. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yes. Yep.
He has a ranch over there. A New Age pit is what it is, called Crestone. And they got their ziggurats and their pyramids and their, you know, it's a total demonic oppression. When I was there the last time, it was, get me out of here, protect me, Lord, get me out of here.
Mhm. Oh yeah, you can feel that sort of thing, I'm sure.
Yes. But here's an interesting thing. In the book of Enoch, the watchers that were watching over mankind, and they were the fallen angels, and the Lord said that he would bind them in the earth for 70 generations. If you add the time up, somewhere around 1880s, 1900, we all of a sudden started experiencing this wave of technological breakthroughs. And then it has just accelerated exponentially up to today. I mean, we have no idea what is in the laboratories of DARPA and, you know, all those dark secret agencies. That
Go ahead.
That the occult, the Illuminists, the Luciferians have tapped into this through channeling, through direct contact with the fallen angels, and that's what we see happening before our very eyes in our Antarctica, etc.
Yeah, I don't think anybody realizes how far advanced they are. I was working for an original equipment manufacturer down in Texas, and the plant manager's brother worked at Los Alamos, and his only remark was that if the American people knew what was really going on down there, and if they knew how far advanced it was, they'd shut it all down. That's spooky. And, of course, Standeo indicated, too, that, you know, there was a lot of stuff that the people really don't know about, which would make it far easier for the Blue Beam Project to actually come to pass. You know, the fake arrival with holographic, real UFO anti-gravity, probably Heinebu or German technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're getting ready for something, don't you? What about you, Larry? I just feel it's close.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is it seems that the tie-in of CERN with Antarctica and some of that information, and, you know, the CERN, that's an almost incredible place of secrets as what they're really doing.
Yeah. I don't does anybody really know what they're doing? You know, everything is so compartmentalized now. And I think it was John Lear that kept saying, well, no matter how far up the chain you go, there's a lie that they feed to you. And so only the people at the very top know what's really going on. So, yeah, it's weird. Anyway, any other comments you'd like to make before we close out? We got about 4 minutes.
Just that the people, that there will be no remedy without repentance. We need to be on our face before the Lord, repenting of the evil of our government, repenting of our own sins, and just seeking the Lord that He guide and direct us in these days ahead.
Yeah, it's going to get scary. Yeah, I think it's really going to start getting scary. Down your way, Larry, I know you have a lot of Bigfoot sightings and portals and stuff like that going on. Is that still happening?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen one here by the house. I mean, it was a direct, I looked at it at me, and moved back into the woods. And, you know, I interviewed the guy over on Rich Mountain, a little ways from me, that had 7 visiting his place one night. And, you know, I told you about that one, of course. And there's a lot of sightings in this area. They even have Bigfoot festivals, you know. And, you know, they almost worship him at those festivals, the Bigfoot. So it's a phenomena, and as Randy was saying, we're talking about the UFO phenomena, it kind of dovetails in with the Bigfoot phenomena. This all goes together.
Yeah, Randy, out there, are you still having cattle and horse mutilations?
No. That's pretty much, you know, they've done their deal on that. But that's pretty much not a news item anymore.
Do you have any of that down there where you are, Larry? Where they have actual mutilation?
Yeah. We have had a few years ago, and that's kind of stopped. And ironically, just before Roger Lear died, and he was the one with the talking about implants, Roger Lear said he had been told by those in the know that experimentation and even the abductions, that those that were doing it were finished. They had finished their course, and now they were ready for the next step.
Now I suppose that's us.
Welcome to the New World Order.
Well, Stewart, there appears to be a hybrid generation coming up.
I think so. Yeah, so it's us. And like Stan Dale found out when he did the Daniel thing, they're kind of cannibalistic. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I guess. Anyway, Randy, how do people get to listen to you on your radio program?
AmericaNewsNet.com. AmericaNewsNet.com. And that will, the live show is Wednesday and Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. Mountain Time.
Okay,
which
Larry. Yeah, go ahead.
You need to come on soon. Both of you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we got to get together. How about you, Larry? How do they find you?
Oh, the quickest way is just visit my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org.
Well, hey, I got to thank both of you guys for coming on. It was a very, very interesting show, particularly the agricultural part of this. I hope the folks out there really get the drift. This is not the time to be sitting down on your couch. This is the time to make your final preps for the coming food scarcity and starvation that will soon be coming upon America. And be unaware, I think the bots are probably very, very accurate about earthquakes. Anyway, thanks again, you guys, for coming on. It was really a lot of fun. Hope to have you back here, Randy and Larry.
Let me know. Shabbat
shalom, Randy.
Shalom.
Okay, well, take care. Take care, you guys, and we'll see you again next week. And good night, all.